There is a specific kind of internal loneliness that doesn't always look like loneliness on the outside. It is completely quiet and invisible, often hiding behind productivity, laughter, or a busy schedule. People often assume that those who live without friends are cold, aloof, or entirely antisocial. But the truth is, they frequently care too deeply and observe every microshift in human energy. When a human being goes too long without social bonds, the brain changes its structural chemistry. It begins to interpret prolonged isolation as a physical threat, triggering deep neural pain receptors. Our minds evolved in tribes where being left alone for too long was an absolute death sentence. That is why modern loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally. It manifests as a heavy physical ache. Today, you can be surrounded by thousands of followers online and still feel utterly unseen. The brain recognizes that attention is not connection, and superficial validation is never true intimacy. Most people without friends did not choose this isolated path overnight or by sudden rebellion. It happens slowly through a long series of small disappointments that pile up over the years. You share something deeply personal and someone laughs, or you trust someone with a secret they betray. Eventually, your protective brain learns a lesson. It is much safer to simply stop reaching out. At first, this self-imposed solitude feels like a relief because it gives you absolute control. But after enough time has passed, healing solitude turns into a haunting, heavy emotional vacuum. Without a mirror in another person, your internal dialogue becomes much louder than the world outside. You start endlessly replaying old memories, dissecting past betrayals, and wondering where it all went wrong. This state leads to a psychological concept known as learned social helplessness within the mind. You have tried and failed so many times that your brain automatically associates reaching out with rejection. Even when you meet good, open-hearted people later, your subconscious guard stays firmly up. You reject yourself before anyone else gets the chance to, isolating out of desperate protection. Loneliness does not always look sad. Many friendless people appear completely fine and highly successful. They build a highly functional version of themselves designed to survive without any emotional connection. But if you listen closely to their stories, you will find a thread of quiet, ancient heartbreak. These are moments where they gave too much of themselves to people who didn't care to stay. The cost of this emotional adaptation is high because without friends, your world becomes small. Your thoughts only echo inside your own mind, with no one to challenge your distorted perspectives. Empathy is a psychological muscle, and prolonged isolation can cause it to slowly weaken from disuse. People become emotionally numb not by choice, but because the brain is protecting itself from unmet needs. Paradoxically, the people who have no friends often crave deep, authentic friendship more than anyone. Because connection is so rare to them, they treasure and overanalyze every tiny passing smile. This lack of interaction makes the mind hypervigilant to subtle social cues and perceived slights. They overanalyze text messages and assume disinterest where none exists, reading between lines that weren't written. Loneliness literally alters your time perception, making minutes feel longer and hours much heavier. When you have no one to share moments with, days blend together in a fog of thoughts. Yet within this profound silence, an extraordinary, beautiful depth of self-awareness can finally emerge. When solitude is approached consciously, it becomes a transformative forge for the human spirit. Because lonely individuals know what it feels like to be invisible. They see others clearly. They are often the ones who notice when someone is left out or suffering in silence. Healing begins when you realize that waiting to be found by the world is not enough. It starts when you remember exactly who you were before the heavy silence of isolation began. Rebuilding social trust is a slow muscle memory, accomplished through tiny acts of daily courage. It is about answering a message without overthinking, or simply letting yourself say yes to life. People with deep emotional histories build walls with windows, wanting connection entirely on safe terms. They crave consistent, warm silence rather than the superficial noise of large social crowds. But true friendship requires vulnerability, which feels like walking barefoot through broken glass when hurt. Many avoid it entirely, telling themselves they are fine alone because they are tired of trying. Imagine if friendship wasn't an impressive performance you had to earn, but something you allowed. The right people will meet you exactly where you are, sensing your quiet not as absence, but depth. The first major step is often grieving the old versions of yourself that settled for crumbs of care. When you heal those desperate, hungry parts of your history, your internal alignment shifts completely. You begin to understand that being alone does not mean you are broken or fundamentally flawed. It means you have been waiting for people who bring peace into your silence, not performance. Long-term isolation takes time to shed, requiring gentle, compassionate self-acceptance along the way. When your mind whispers that you are unworthy, answer it softly with patience and understanding. Loneliness is never a permanent state. It is a psychological winter that eventually gives way to warmth. There will come a day when you sit across from someone who understands your complexity instantly. I'm Leo, and I hope this note reminds you of your inherent value within humanity's thread. Walk gently with yourself. Look for real energy over attention. Think deeply and stay grounded.